Hey guys, it's Coach Herb here. Just wanted to go back over the It's a Meme Problem assignment from yesterday. Uh, dealing with the idea of China and Japan during the Age of Exploration. We talked about what they kind of were going up through before, but the reading and the assignment had you reading about some of the problems that came about due to exploration and explorers coming to their lands. Not only explorers, but also missionaries, because we talked about how that was a goal as well. It wasn't just trade, but also gold and converting Christians or converting non-Christians to Christianity. And so, as you read, hopefully you found some of these problems. And again, your skill you're working on was identifying problems and finding the solution to those problems. So, as you read, hopefully you could see those things. Some of the things that I thought as I read and as we talked about it, that you could have focused on in terms of ideas or problems would have been that they were exploring, but funds were needed to complete the Great Wall to protect their borders. So they stopped exploring. And so that would definitely be one of the problems. Another one would be they were worried about influence of outsiders. So they kind of restricted trade from the beginning. 2 or 3, they were profit-minded merchants smuggling cargoes of silk, porcelain, and other valuable goods out of the country into the eager hands of European merchants. You could have talked about something like that people were stealing stuff or smuggling things under the idea or under the government's control or out of their eye. And then lastly, the British could have continued trading with the Chinese, but Great Britain refused to kowtow and instead asked for a better trade agreement, which we'll see kind of the solution. So those are just some of the problems that I noticed as I read through there. And some of the solutions that were also available to you were as follows as well. So that's the second part, was to find the solution. So, if you have a problem, you can hopefully find a solution. And usually if you're reading through there, you can see some of the solutions to their problems. So the first thing is they needed funds, so they stopped their own exploration. When Young He died and the emperor that promoted him died, then the exploration stopped. Partly for that and partly because of the fact that they needed the funds to complete the Great Wall or update it to protect their borders. They were worried about, some people coming and taking them over, which did happen. But had they not stopped, we never know what could have come from that. Secondly, when the British refused to kowtow and asked for a better trade agreement, they forced them out of the trade markets in China. The British leave that area and don't return for a long time. So the Chinese markets are free from British control and the issues that came about from that. And then lastly, one of their solutions to profit-minded and merchants and the influence of outsiders was the government controlled foreign trade. They didn't allow just merchants to trade with anybody. They controlled all of it. And, whether right or wrong, that was how they tried to solve the problems of the age of exploration in China. We also read about Japan and their issues. There's a lot of different things that they were going through. They had Christian missionaries. They were a little late because of the Civil War. And so when the first Europeans kind of came into Japan, they brought a bunch of different stuff with them. And some of it had good effects, some of it bad. You had eyeglasses and clocks, but you also had firearms and tobacco. And so some of the potential problems that I found were that firearms introduced by the Portuguese changed warfare for the worse, meaning that some daimyo that fought traditionally with the sword were completely blown away by firearms, muskets, and even castles were built because of the use of cannons. So gunpowder and firearms in Japan really changed warfare for the worse. Secondly, they had a lot of missionaries come with these traders, and the Japanese allowed the missionaries to come because they didn't want to disrupt the trade that was going on in their country. But the missionaries were there for a separate goal, like we talked about, converting non-Christians to Christianity. And so they wanted to convert the Japanese people to Christianity. That was definitely a problem because they scorned traditional Japanese beliefs and sometimes even involved themselves in politics. And, that's definitely not something that as a visitor to a country you need to be doing. But these people did. And because of that, it really wore out their welcome. Lastly, it really made them mad, really made the Tokugawa shogunate mad that Christian converts rebelled against the emperor and the government. And so that really frustrated the Tokugawa shogunate, and they really made sure to fix this problem through their solutions. Their first one, and probably the main one, is the closed country policy. They came up with this policy that no one was allowed in or out because they did not want Western ideas to come in any way. If you were allowed out, you could go and learn and then come back and bring those ideas in with you. Even though you were a traditional Japanese person, you may be trained now in European ideals. And so no one was allowed in, so the European ideas couldn't come in, their trade, their issues, but also no one was allowed out to go learn those ideas and then bring them back. Two, because of the problems with Christian converts, they persecuted Christians and forced them out of Japan very quickly. This was one of the big deals even after the Tokugawa emperor or shogunate, after it passed on from many different leaders. This was still carried out because they wanted to force them out. So they persecuted them ruthlessly and then forced them out. Thirdly, they only allowed China and the Dutch to trade with Japan, and only at one port, Nagasaki. So because of this, they had a monopolized trade, or they had a monopoly on trade. So they monopolized trade there, the Japanese government did. And so, allowing only trade to one port, they can control what came in and what came out, or what left, and they also could control who actually got to trade. And so this monopoly on trade made them very profitable, and they sustained themselves without Europe, just like China would, for around 200 years. We'll come back to this area as we get to talking about age of imperialism. But we won't hear about the Chinese or the Japanese for a long time because they closed themselves off the world. So, kind of the main idea is that the age of exploration led to the idea that China and Japan would isolate themselves from the world. And they will eventually get back involved, but for a long time they will not be. Again, the last kind of task you had was to create a meme that symbolizes the solution to this, to the problems they had during exploration. You need to do one for each, and it can be really anything. You just need to be creative, or try to be creative. I don't want to say you need to be creative, but you need to try to be creative and really think about what best symbolizes the solution. So you've had a couple of options there. You could use a bunch of different styles of memes, but don't worry about the creativeness. I'm not going to grade you on that. Just, did you try, and did you actually have a good attempt in terms of were you thinking along the right lines? It doesn't mean it has to be the most funny meme or the most funny idea or the most creative idea. So do your best, work really hard, and make sure you get this turned in. If you have any questions, send me an email, and I hope you have a great day.